Welcome to an all-new episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Aluchi. Hey guys, and welcome to another exciting episode of Looks and Wisdom Sundays with me, Aluchi, aka the Elusive Pandit. Honey, how are you feeling? I'm feeling good. I'm actually recording this in the mother city because I'm here for the week and I'm just happy and excited and relaxed. So without further ado, let's get to it. So March is a holy month across a lot of religions, so I thought I should focus on some wisdom from the Holy Bible. 2 weeks ago, we actually found wisdom from the book of Proverbs. Last week, we found wisdom from the book of Ecclesiastes. And this week, we're going to look at wisdom in the book of Job. I just want to add my disclaimer again. I am not a Bible fundy, and I will not be going verse by verse. This is basically finding overarching wisdom from each of the chapters and not just be a pastor or a preacher about it. I just want to find the overarching wisdom, really. So without further ado, let's get to it. I will be breaking this down into three main talking points. So the first point will be the introduction, how the story of Job came about. And then the second one, Job trying to find out why he is going through what he is going through in life. And then God actually coming in to try to get us to understand why Job's story actually happened in the first place. And then obviously I like ending this with Bible verses that literally drive the same points we were talking about home. So before I get into the actual story of Job, I wanted to start this with my own story because the reason why we're here with this wisdom series actually started in 2020. So my mom started not feeling well, and because I work in the medical industry, I actually called up one of the nurses that I knew who was actually closer to where my mom stays to go check what's going on. And she actually gave me the results and she was like, Bongi, it looks like it could be serious. She said that we must actually just take her to a real doctor to run some tests and then we can take it from there. She told me what the circumstances could be, but obviously we had to wait for the doctor's test to come out. So the doctor's test actually did come out and they confirmed what her suspicion was, which was that my mom actually had cancer. And I was at my wits when I found out this information. I was highly emotional and highly vulnerable in my thinking. And this was only because my dad actually passed away from cancer a few years back. And we literally found out that my dad had cancer in September. And then in November, he had already passed away. And I was pissed off by the whole thing because when we went to go see the doctor, he said my dad was going to be alive up until December. And we were like, okay, that's fine. And then he actually passed away before the projected time of the doctor. So when I found out that my mom had cancer, it was just a sore point for me. I'm not even gonna lie. And it was also a sore point for my mom because she knew what happened to my dad, so she thought the same thing was gonna happen to her. So as I have a strong relationship with God and spirit, the first thing I do with anything, I go to God and spirit. So that's exactly what I did. But I wasn't in my usual, oh, thank God, blah, blah, blah state. I was in my, God, how could you? Why would you do this to my family? We are good Christians. We praise you every day. We pay our tithes. How could you do this? You know we're doing the best that we can with the time that we're given. I was highly emotional. I remember that. And I was crying and I was just like throwing my toys at God and just like, oh, hate you. And then when I was done, there was just like a revelation in my head that I needed to go read the story of Job, which I did. And I promise you, I was shocked. Not in a shock to a negative state, but in a shock to a revelation state. I remember finishing reading the story of Job and thinking, oh my God, I'm relieved. Thank God, really. And I was like, okay, let's get to it. So let's get to the story of Job to find out what I found out and also add some of the research that I've done. So the story of Job begins by saying that Job is a righteous and upright, good man who follows God through and through. So he is one of God's favorite soldiers. He is truly a good man that is outstanding, good, righteous, literally all the positive things that you can think about. Job was that. And then he had prosperity, he was wealthy, he had a wife, 10 children. He was living a highly opulent life. So he was highly blessed, highly favored, and he was also a good, upstanding man. He didn't do any evil, he only practiced good. And then now that we know this information, so we get taken to heaven where God is holding court, and he is having this court or meeting. I'll call it a meeting, or like a board of directors meeting, actually, because that's what I figured that out to be. So God is having a meeting with his board of directors. He's going around the table trying to find out what they were doing. So they get to Satan, and Satan gives his feedback, and it's like, yeah, God, I've been in and out of earth, busy creating unfavorable conditions for people, bringing about evil, bringing about all these bad things, suffering to everybody else. So I've been doing a good job. God is like, all right, Satan, you're doing a great job. I appreciate the feedback. And he actually looks at Satan and is like, oh, did you actually consider my good and faithful servant, Job? And Satan's like, yeah, I did, but I have a theory about Job. And God is like, what theory do you have? And Satan's like, I actually believe that Job is only a good and faithful servant to you because you provide him with all this wealth and opulence. And actually, if you're not providing all these things, he would be just like other people, just not praising you or praising you partially. And the only reason that he's here fully invested in your guys' relationship is actually because you just bless him. God is like, okay. And Satan is like, to prove my point, how's about we inflict suffering on Job, take away his material, and see how he's gonna do? And God is like, okay. And then we get taken back to earth again, and then Job's materialistic things get taken away. So the wealth gets taken away, his children die, his wife leaves him, he is out in the streets with no money. And then Satan's like to God, okay, I've taken away the material. He's not suffering as much as I think he would. How's about we add some physical suffering as well? God is like, okay. And then Job actually gets sores all over his body. He's in the streets. He's got no wife, no children. He is suffering immensely. He has grief for his children, and he also has grief for all the things that he has lost. And then because he's suffering, he becomes like me, gets angry at God and goes to him with all his vile energy. And he's basically like, how could you, God? I am a good and faithful servant. Why would you inflict this suffering in my life? I am innocent. I haven't done anything towards you. Why would you do this? And he's highly emotional and highly irrational. And then while he's highly emotional and highly irrational, we get introduced to his 3 friends. So these are like 3 entities that represent all of the Eastern wisdom. And they basically say to Job, Job, you can't definitely be innocent, because God is just, God operates in a just way, and he actually manages the world in a just manner. So in order for you to suffer, you definitely did something wrong. And Job is like, hello, I didn't do anything wrong. I just woke up to the suffering. And then the guys are like, child, think very hard. Think about it. Think, Job. And Job is like, I didn't do anything. So they go back and forth. Basically, the wise 3 friends are telling Job that God is just, and there's no way he will inflict suffering unless you do something bad to piss off God. And that's how suffering happens to people, because God is pissed off based on your own actions that you performed in this world. And Job is like, I didn't do it. And then the guys are like, you lying guy. I swear to God, you're lying, because God is just and he would never. And Job is like, your God is unjust and your God is a bully and I'm innocent. And he needs to come here and explain himself why I'm suffering. And then after that, then we get introduced to another person who is Elu. So Elu is like, Job, you have it wrong. God is just. God is not a bully. God definitely does operate the world in a just way. And I just want to explain what we mean by just in this circumstance. Basically, if you do good, you get rewarded with good. And if you do bad, you get rewarded with bad. And then he's like, maybe then God is bringing suffering to you for two things. God inflicts suffering as a warning to people so that they don't sin in the future. Or he actually inflicts suffering to build character, basically character building. Maybe Job is suffering because God wants to build his character. If not, then maybe he's just trying to warn him to not sin or commit any crimes in the future. And so Job is like so pissed off with this back and forth. He just like, I'm not even going to respond to you, Hugh, because what the heck? And then, which then takes us to the next segment where God actually comes to Job and shows himself. So basically, when God comes to Job, he basically comes in a whirlwind. And the first thing he says to Job is, where were you? Job, since you've got your degree, since you're so smart and know everything, where were you? Where were you when I was building the world? Did I call you to come help me with a forklift to build the world? Where were you, Job? Where were you when I was putting the measurements of the world? Where were you? Are you in the morning, do I call you to come raise the sun? In the evening, do I call you to come set it? Who's responsible for the waves in the ocean? Who's responsible for all the clouds? Why are the clouds giving us rain? Who makes that transformation? Can you even count the clouds? Can you count the hairs on your head, Job? Who gives you this breath that you breathe? How's about this machine that you have as a body that doesn't even need you to self-function? You're blinking right now. Who's causing all the blincation? Do you know where the dead people are? Do you know how the living come about? Since you are out here asking me questions with your little minions. There are wild goats in the mountains. They are self-sufficient. They give birth. Human beings give birth in 9 to 10 months. Did I ask you? Did I ask you, Job? So what basically God is doing when he takes Job on this world tour is trying to get us to understand the complexities of the world. And it's trivial for God to be dealing with Job's low situation of him suffering, basically, which is the same thing that it comes to us as human beings. There is 8 billion human beings in this world. God is basically asking, must I come and micromanage your little life? There's 8 billion of you guys. On top of the 8 billion people that live, there's actually the world that lives within those human beings. I don't call you for the rain. I don't call you for the different season. I don't call you to grow the plants. The grass exists on its own. All of these things that self-automate in this world, I don't call you for. So why would you call me unjust for giving you a low suffering? Why would you even bother your time and space and ask me to come and have a conversation with you about this trivial thing that is happening in your life when I am busy? Let me tell you something, Job. I actually created the monsters that roam this world. I created the good and I created the evil. But you out here accusing me of being unjust, of being a bully. Really, Job? Really? Really? So that's what we're going to do over here. You will not ask, you're calling me and accusing me of being anything when you were out here making all these coins and living this lavish life. Now, all of a Sunday, I'm the bully and I'm the unjust God. Wow. I'm shocked. I am perplexed, to say the least. But I'm not going to say anything other than the fact that I have the divinity to run the world. And I gave you the same divinity to run your own life. The just or not just conversation I'm not having with you at all. You can't tell me how to run the world because you don't understand it. And all these little things that you are saying are just and unjust, those are trivial things to me because I am busy dealing with the bigger scheme of things. Manage your own life as you should. And like I said in Ecclesiastes, do what you can with what you have. Okay? So I'm not coming through for none of this. I'm not. I really am not. Matter of fact, bye. Because I'm have to be busy running the world, making sure the sun sets tonight. I'm going to have to be making sure that the women take 9 months to give birth. I'm out here making sure that the rain is going to rain in winter to make sure the plants are nourished enough to give fruit to feed your silly ass. I don't have time, Job. I don't have time. Bye. I enjoy doing that. But basically, in this interaction, when God is taking Job on the world tour, darling, he is not saying to us whether he's just or not just, or whether he operates the world according to our understanding of good and bad. He's basically telling us that we are not in a position to understand the world as it exists for him, because he is the creator, the overarching energy for all of us. What we have to do in our lives, literally chill in our corner and manage our lives the way we know how to manage our lives. He's given us all the resources to do so. And if you don't believe that, then you shouldn't believe that God made you in his image, because it says in the Bible that I made you in my image. So if God can run the world on his own, that means that we can run our own world on our own. Which is the message that I got when my mother had the cancer and he told me to go read Job. It was, okay, God is doing the best that he can with what he's got, and I can do the best that I can with what I've got. And I don't need to know whether God is just or not, because I have the power and the divinity to make the things that I feel are possible in my life. And God basically put it to me in black and white. If you think your mama gonna die from the cancer, then that's what's gonna happen. If you don't think your mom's going to die from the cancer, then that's what's going to happen. But either way, you have the divinity to choose any of the above circumstances. And then I got off that and I was like, Mom, God says that we are in charge of our own lives. So if you're sitting there thinking you're going to die from the cancer, you are probably going to die. And if you think you're not going to die from the cancer, you probably are not going to die. So you need to make the decision, because God says he gave us all the resources to make sure whatever decision we make happens. And my mom was like, oh my God, I'm relieved. I want to live and I'm going to live. And I was like, Roger that. We've got Discovery Medical Aid. Let's get the doctors to work. So that's what God is actually driving home in the book of Job, that you don't have to understand why you're suffering. You don't have to understand whether God is just or not. You don't have to understand whether God operates the world in a good equals good, bad equals bad thing. You just need to understand that he created everything that lives in this world, and he knows why, or maybe he doesn't even know why, but we just have to trust and believe that whatever's happening in our lives is happening in our lives, and he made us in his image. That means we have the divinity to solve everything that happens to us. That's what I learned when my mom had to be dealing with the cancer thing, that God actually was like, Bongi, you have the power and the divinity to do what you think is possible. And I had a conversation with my mom and I was like, Mom, God says that whatever we believe is true. And if you think this thing is going to kill you, it will. If you don't think it's going to kill you, it won't. But we have all the resources in this world to make it happen. And my mom was like, I am choosing life. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And we really did it. My mom actually overcame cancer. And she got to live because we understood what the story of Job was saying. Don't try to understand why the suffering happens, but know that whatever suffering you're going through, you have everything in your power to overcome that. Without further ado, let's get to some Bible verses. And the first Bible verse that I'm going to read to you guys is Job chapter 1 verse 8. It says that, and the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my good and faithful servant Job? There's no one like him in the world, a blameless, upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. And I wanted to bring this point home. When Satan was having that conversation with God, he was actually just bringing about his own feedback saying, I've been in and around the world causing suffering. And God was like, did you think about my good and faithful servant Job? So God actually is the one who brought Job into the conversation that led Satan to his conclusion about Job being only good and righteous because he is getting blessings from God, which then subsequently led to God and Satan having this agreement that Job was ultimately going to suffer. It was God who brought Job up. That's the point I'm trying to bring to you. So that means that God chooses. We don't. And the second verse I want to speak about is Job chapter 1 verse 1, which basically says, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. He was blameless, upright, and God-fearing, and he turned away from evil. And I mean, that just says that God is just a good guy. Like, that was God's main point. Good guy, no reason at all, goes through suffering, gets emotional, asks God all these questions, God answers, and then Job went back to being blessed again, double actually. The third verse we will speak about is Job 37 verse 5. It says, behold, God is mighty and does not despise any. He is mighty in strength and understanding. And I mean, this is coming from when God was now having the conversation with Job when he was taking him on the tour. You can see God's might. If you look out the window, I'm looking out the window, I'm seeing the ocean right now. I mean, like, we will never understand the depths of the ocean. That just shows God's vastness and his mightiness. I'm not even going to talk about the whole world. I'm not even going to talk about the rest of everything. Women giving birth, us being able to reproduce other human beings. That's just crazy if you think about it. So God is mighty and does not despise any. Doesn't despise good, doesn't despise evil. He is just mighty. The third verse I'm bringing to the table, Job chapter 22 verse 21, and it says, agree with God and be at peace. I mean, I can continue with the verse, but I really just wanted to sit there for a couple of minutes. Agree with God and be at peace. I love this so much because that's what I practice in my life. I don't care how it's going. I really don't care. I could lose my job today and I wouldn't even bat an eye because it would be God's agreement, whether it's through Satan or whether it's through the good entities. It would just be God's will because it's happening, and everything that happens under the sun is God's will. Agree with God's will and be at peace. That's what I do, whether I'm going through a good situation or a bad situation. I'm like, what can I do? It's already happening. I can just be present for it. And this is the last one. And I mean, I like this one because it adds to everything that we spoke about in the entire series. And he said to man, so this is Job 28 verse 28. And he said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. I'm not even going to drag the whole thing. Like we spoke about, the book of Proverbs tells us to fear the Lord and understand that there is wisdom. The book of Ecclesiastes says, fear the Lord and align your purpose in life with God's purpose. And now we are sitting here at Job and it says, fear the Lord. That is wisdom. Turn away from evil. Fear the Lord. I mean, I don't want to drag the whole thing, but fear the Lord. And so this is the end of now the wisdom books, which is Job, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs. The next 2 weeks, I'll make it a surprise, are going to be 2 different topics, still aligned to the Bible though. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Do like, do comment, do subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. How are you feeling?